What is up, everybody? I just wrapped up Brushes with Death, which is the first DLC for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. It's time to give my review. This is obviously a DLC, not some massive expansion, so don't go into this anticipating something with a lot of massive length and girth. Not to yank your pizzle, but this is a DLC, so it's relatively short. I think your mileage will vary. Doing some reading online, it looks like most people were getting between 8 to 12 hours, depending on how much of the side content you got involved in, whether or not you did fast travel, the difficulty you're playing on, many of those things factor in. My personal journey was a little over 7 hours through it, and I didn't do any of the shield painting because my Henry doesn't use a shield. So that part of the game for this particular playthrough of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 didn't really make any sense because I'm a bow first and sword second, and I use a long sword, and all of my points are in long sword. So I was like, I'm not going to worry about the shield painting because that's not something that I really need to pay attention to. But the story was super interesting, and that's really what I want to focus on in this review. So, um, if you haven't played through it yet, understand that this is going to be spoiler territory ahead. So, if you don't want the story spoiled, um, just don't watch this review because I am going to be talking about the story in this review completely. This is not a spoiler-free review. Again, I will be talking story. This is not a spoiler-free review. You've had your one and only, or I should say two and only, warnings that everything from this point will be spoiler territory, so you've been warned. Um, I think the most intriguing thing about this to me was the fact that it was, we're dealing with mental health here at its core in a time when no one understood mental illnesses and what was going on in people's heads. And so we literally have a painter here who he's psychotic. He has episodes, he hears voices, those voices tell him to do things. He talks to a skull, a human skull. He has violent compulsions. And through the course of working on this quest, you realize that all of his psychosis is related to some past trauma that he went through with some childhood friends, and how that has impacted him as well as the other individuals tied to that storyline. Um, the way that the story ends up is intriguing because he's not exactly cured, but he has found you have helped him reach a place of peace where the voices have quieted in his head, but he is still not completely cured. And I think that from a storytelling perspective, what's really intriguing about this to me is that in these times we're dealing with a church who very much viewed anything outside of their purview as heretical, and you could get burned at the stake, and all these horrible things could happen to you. So one of the major central themes here, of course, is Henry and many of the people living around him, or Jesus Christ be praised. It's all about the church, and yet this guy is dealing with something that is very much of the demonic nature if you were to listen to the church. And so from the very get-go, you're running around doing things that Henry can question because of his particular, depending on how you're role playing your Henry, because you're going to be seeking out, pagan locations in the beginning of the stages of this quest, and you're helping him track down things, the painter, and you're like the cockatrice egg, or the not the cockatrice egg, why am I blanking on the name, the egg quest. Basilisk, thank you. Like my brain couldn't work there for a minute. When you're doing the Basilisk egg quest, as an example, that is all about some pagan shit that if the church finds out, they're gonna take care of you. So I found that to be a really interesting way to approach this because you're doing things that would be completely. If you got caught during these times, it would be to risk your life and limb. Interestingly enough, this DLC, as I understand it, was put together by an independent studio that Warhorse worked with on creating the storyline here. So it's really interesting to see them bringing another independent studio into the fold to help work on this. Matter of fact, let me look this up so that I understand. Quick commercial break, everyone, to celebrate and give thanks to all of these amazing people who keep me on the air full time. Really appreciate the support. All you got to do is join as a member. You get access to private videos. You can also do super thanks on any upload or super chats and stickers on any live stream or premiere you see. And beyond that, don't forget we're multi-streaming over on Twitch now, so you can support over there as well. Thanks so much to everybody. Let's get back to the video at hand. Okay, here it is. I had to look it up and find it on Warhorse's Twitter account. It was Ashbourne Games, are the team that helped on Brushes with Death. So this is an interesting thing that it was, partially worked on by an outside studio of Warhorse. So I'm really happy to see Warhorse continue to expand, bring in additional talent, and to help other studios in that part of the world to get front front page and center with the fame of Kingdom Come Deliverance franchise. So kudos to everybody who worked on this expansion. Obviously we have great voice acting, motion performance. I would say that the primary focus of this DLC is on the story. There wasn't necessarily, there were action elements to it depending on how it played out, but like the very beginning of the DLC, you're actually specifically told, not just then actually, multiple times throughout the story as you're working with our painter friend, you're reminded that violence really isn't the main course of action. He prefers you to take a diplomatic route to everything. And you come to find out why that is later on in the story because of some past events that he went through as a child with his childhood friends. That trauma has impacted him as an adult, not only with the mental state of mind that he's in, but also with his aversion to physical violence. So for the very first quest, I was actually going in and you have to do an archery competition and a dice play. You have to play dice and beat a guy in an archery competition, like the very first stage of this quest. And then after that, there's infiltration stuff. There's diplomacy stuff. There's always a way to resolve things without resorting to violence. There were only a couple of times that I could think where I had to directly use violence. One was, as an example, you're gathering a pearl from the riverbanks and you're told that there might be bandits nearby, also scouring the river for these rare pearls. And sure enough, when I got to the river, there were bandits I had to take care of. But everything else, for the most part, I think, I'm trying to think if there's any other specific instances. There was another instance where I had to rescue a carpenter's apprentice from an encampment, and that had bandits in it. So there were a couple of times where I had to use direct force, but everything else you could choose to do through diplomacy. And there was one quest in particular that I really enjoyed where you're basically meeting up with a past associate of him who basically betrayed him years ago with a contract, and he's betraying him again with this contract, this painting commission, and you have to convince this guy that the devil has come to steal his soul. And that was honestly a really fun quest line. Just the gathering of the materials to make the costume, and then Henry's voice acting and motion performance when he is performing as the devil, as the Lord of Hell. And then you get to keep the helmet afterwards, which is this ridiculous, like, you have a normal visored helmet, but then it has like ears and antlers on it, and the beak of it is all floppy, and it just looks completely ridiculous, but you can keep wearing it after the fact. So yeah, like I said, this was a story-based DLC, and for me, I'm fine with that because I'm a story-based player. The story for me, and that's the one thing about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is I know a lot of people when they play the game choose to ignore the story and just focus on the combat or the archery. But at its core, this is a story-based RPG with, as some people complained when the game first came out, oh, why does it have all these dozens of hours of cut? I don't want to watch 3 hours of cutscenes. I just want to play the game. I'm loving the fact that it has lots of cutscenes and that they put the actors front and center to do their thing. And this is definitely par for the course for this game in the sense that it is a heavily story-based expansion. And it gave us a fun story, a very interesting story, dealing with mental illness in a time where mental illness was not understood. And even in today's day and age, we have mental illness which can be treated, but is still not curable in many cases. And it's still something that continues to be studied, but at least we're not as adverse to it as we once were, and at least we don't burn people at the stake anymore just because they're hearing voices. So I had a great time. Definitely, it was fun to step back into Henry's shoes for a couple of days while I worked my way through the adventure. Let me know your thoughts on the DLC down in the comments below. Did you watch the streams? If you didn't, you can always check the playlist below to catch more. And I do own the gold edition of this game, so as the DLCs come out, I will play all of them. They're going to be coming out throughout the rest of 2025, so hopefully you will continue to follow along as I step back into Henry's boots from time to time in 2025. Till next time, everybody, stay safe and happy gaming.